Hey, what's up, everybody? We have a new YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe right now. Leave a comment on the video. Share it with your friends. It's also a podcast, 3 and Out, wherever you listen with me, John Middlekauff, Apple, Spotify. We have you covered, as well as thevolume.com. We have merch. Check out. I got 3 and Out hats right now. Thevolume.com. Search the podcast. Buy some merch. Okay, time for a little thing we call the mailbag. At John Middlekauff is the Instagram. Fire in those DMs. Get your question answered here on the show. Easy to do. Start with Lane. Question for the mailbag. Do you think the Seahawks would be better off drafting a solid line player at 16 this year and then either lose their way or trade their way to a top pick for a quarterback next year, or take Penix this year? It's a good question. I think we might have a DM coming in later because I saw it when I was just kind of scrolling through, of a guy pushing back against the Geno hate. There's no Geno hate. Geno's story is fantastic, but he kind of is what he is. I mean, he's never going to be – I just don't see him as a top 14 quarterback. And here's the thing. You do have Penix's OC, Grubb, who went with DuBois to Alabama. Then Seattle hired him to be the OC. So you can never discount them as a sleeper moving up to do that. But sometimes I think we overvalue some of those college connections, but you never know. Here's actually the DM about Seattle. Become a big fan. I'm a Seahawks fan and not totally understand the Geno hate. Yes, there is definitely a stigma around the league about him. I don't think there's a stigma. People were just impressed with his rise. And then we watched him play for 2 years, and we just kind of say, solid quarterback. But not good enough, especially in that division. Like, he's not as good as Brock Purdy, and he's definitely not as good as Matt Stafford, and he's not as good as Kyler Murray. But as someone who watches every game, he can be the guy. He can make all the throws. Only a handful of guys in the league, and I believe his maturity is now to be great. I think the Seahawks play calling the last couple of years has been truthfully holding him back. I don't know, man. I feel like everyone shit on Seattle's play calling for a decade. And for the last 5-6 years, the defense has been the problem. I don't view it as your play calling. I think Shaden Waldron's pretty good. Be my OC any day. So I think that's kind of I don't want to say lazy, because that's your opinion. And listen, most people, unless your OC is like Andy Reid, hell, Kyle Shanahan takes shit. Sean McVay doesn't really, because their fan base is kind of weird. But you know what I mean. I have a hard time with Geno Smith saying that he's some high-end guy. He's not. He's not. And there's nothing wrong with that. He's been damn good. He's kept you guys very relevant these last couple of years. And because of the way he's played, made the Russell Wilson trade look even better. Because you guys didn't bottom out. You guys were solid and made the playoff 2 years ago and are right there this year. But is he the answer? No. That's my opinion. Maybe you're right. Maybe John Schneider believes that. I would doubt it, but who knows? Draft question. Was talking about best player available versus need. What about most likely or not likely to succeed? Well, I mean, that's whenever you're drafting a guy, you feel that, especially high, he's going to succeed. For example, if you want to draft a quarterback but have no line or wide receivers, not everyone is transcendent talent that can overcome that. Same with a wide receiver who has no quarterback or corner with no pass rush. Does the team have the right infrastructure for success? I believe we're responsible for our own success, but some guys are put in nearly impossible situations. Those teams might be better off drafting a stud defensive tackle and putting him next to a good defensive tackle and not waste, quote unquote, a high draft pick who has such a high probability to fail given the roster. Thoughts? Totally agree. I would say most of us, if we're going to succeed, are going to find a will and a way to succeed in whatever we do. Podcasting, sales, whatever. Because we can leave companies, start our own. We have so much control over our own destiny. Anyone listening to this right now who's struggling in a bad job, this is America. You can leave at any moment. You can quit your job tomorrow, give 2-week notice or whatever. That's not true for professional athletes, right? So some players, now I do think for the most part, guys' true colors come out over time. But young people confidence is a huge, I would say, catalyst towards success, and it's easy to destroy it. So at quarterback, I would say corner somewhat. Wide receivers, I mean, we've seen a lot of great receivers play with a lot of shitty quarterbacks, and everyone knows like this guy's awesome. Like no one thinks Devontae sucks just because his quarterback play was bad last year, right? Larry Fitzgerald played half his career with crappy quarterbacks. But a quarterback, you go like if Drake May, who is viewed as a project, goes to the New England Patriots, where the owner's kid thinks he's a genius. The head coach has been coaching for like 5 years. Elliott Wolf doesn't even have the title of GM. Like it could get weird and it get weird fast. And it could derail any chances of the guy's success. It's why my take last week was like, why not just trade back and start building the team? Now, the problem is the owners, like, if they were to win 3 or 4 games, they're not used to getting shit on. And it's one thing to get shit on. Everyone's pointing the finger at Bill. There's no Bill to be the shield now. So everyone in Boston would come after the Kraft family. Before Mayo, before Elliott Wolf, before Drake May, they're under the gun. That's why my theory is that they're going to take a quarterback, because it kind of takes a little pressure off them because everyone's talking about the quarterback. Could be wrong with that theory, but we'll see. Question for the bag. It seems consensus top 6 quarterbacks in this draft are Caleb, Jaden, May, McCarthy, Penix, and Nix. 2 years ago, Spencer Rattler was considered worthy of the top overall pick by some. If the Rams draft Rattler with the 83rd pick and he sits behind Stafford and then takes over, assuming Stafford retires after this year, is it crazy to think he would become one of the most successful quarterbacks of the draft class a few years from now? Well, if you tell me any quarterback gets drafted in the top 100 by the Rams, I would say if that guy has an opportunity to play in the next 18 months, so if Stafford were to get hurt this year or that scenario you just laid out, I would bet on that guy's chances with McVay, the infrastructure, the young talent they have on offense, depending on where these other guys go. So much for a young quarterback is how you land. And I also think when you're a later round pick, there's less pressure on you. Part of being Jaden Daniels or Drake May or JJ McCarthy, if they all get drafted really high, there's a ton of pressure that comes with that. And when you fuck up, they eat you alive. They eat you. It's like when a kicker gets drafted really high in the 3rd round, let's say. Saw it with the Niners. Remember years ago with Tampa. The moment that guy starts missing kicks in practice, it is a major story. If that guy's an undrafted free agent, no one's even talking about it. When you're a high round pick at any position, what you do in training camp is talked about, I don't know, 5x more. We all know this. We all follow our teams and follow the league. Those high picks are discussed at just a rate that is not comparable to the other picks on the team. Even if other picks on the team turn out to be way better players, that's not the way it is early on in their career. Never forget Jamar Chase's training camp. He couldn't catch a cold. Like, this guy's a bust. Cannot catch the football. Turned out he's pretty good. So I just think that pressure that comes along with these high picks, that's part of getting eaten alive. No one wants to wait for you. We have no patience. None of these owners financially worry about if he sucks, whatever, I can pay it off. We're gone. The bonus is already paid. It's not that much money. See him, move on. It's why some of these mid-round picks or even second-day picks get to kind of ease into their career. Derek Carr, 2nd-round pick. There was less pressure on him early on. Even Jimmy Garoppolo, who was pretty famous by the time the Niners got him, even after they signed him to a big contract, but the pressure that comes along with, like, God, this guy was the 3rd pick in the draft. That's part of Zach Wilson's downfall. It's like, wait, this guy's 2nd pick in the draft? No different for the number 1 overall pick. I mean, the pressure on Caleb is, I would say, I don't want to say 10x because the pressure on whoever Washington takes pretty high. But Caleb's pressure is way higher because he's been billed as the top guy for years. He was just the top recruit, the highest paid guy in college football, the no-brainer number 1 overall pick. It's a lot of pressure. And if he handles it seamlessly and becomes a great player, that's impressive. It just is. Even if he has the God-given ability, which he clearly physically has the traits to play the quarterback at a high level. But if you can just handle the pressure, I'd be impressed. I've said all along, if he just becomes like a top 12 quarterback, Bears are in good shape. He becomes a star, obviously it's game changer. Hope you're enjoying your weekend. Love your candid opinions. No one is putting out the quality and quantity like you. I didn't need to read that, but he wrote it. I'm an officer in the Army, currently stationed in Germany. We appreciate your service, Benjamin. I'm a diehard Lions fan, and I'm thrilled with the trajectory. Although catching night games at 1 a.m. can be rough, what are your thoughts on Holmes trading back out of the first round? Is he obligated to make a big splash on the big stage with the draft in Detroit? Appreciate it. I also lived in Davis from 2010 to 2013 when my dad was stationed there. He worked as an Army instructor at UC Davis and Sac State. Small world. My dad was a UC Davis alum. So were a lot of my friends. Spent 18 years in that little town. They are not obligated by any means. One, they're drafting, what's their draft pick? 29? How does it go? Yeah, it goes Lions, Ravens, Niners, Chiefs. So let's face it. When you draft that late, ideally you trade back a couple spots and go to the second round. Because you're drafting a guy most of the time that's not a first round pick, but you're paying him first round money. So he is by no means obligated to do anything. They could just stay and take a player, but he's just because the draft's in your home city, they're not at the draft. They're in their war room. So I hear what you're saying. They just need to draft some couple good players, whether it turns out to be your 3rd and 4th round pick or whether it's your 1st, 2nd round pick. I don't know. I don't have your draft board. I don't know if you have all those picks, but assuming you do, you guys are a couple pieces away if Goff keeps playing well from competing for the Super Bowl. I mean, hell, you did this year. So I wouldn't worry about the splash on draft night because it's in Detroit. Say Brock wins a Super Bowl this year. Do you think despite him winning a Super Bowl, he will still be seen as a quarterback that is something to prove come contract time? Would it be seen as he won because of his weapons? I just think people forget it takes a long time to shake stuff. And, the perception of you when you're a draft pick late becomes your reality. It took Tom Brady like 6-7 years to shake that he was like a top guy. Universally, everyone thought Peyton Manning was better, and that Tom was carried by his defenses. That's why a lot of people are mad at the dynasty, because it just skipped over 2 of the Super Bowl teams after they won the initial one. I mean, it took Tom till 2007, the year he won the MVP, and they went undefeated to the Super Bowl, that everyone just acknowledged, like, yeah, he's right there. He's as good, if not better, than Peyton. And he had won 3 Super Bowls. So this conversation's not going to end no matter how the season goes. Unless he throws 45 touchdowns, Super Bowl MVP, and it's so great, no one can say anything. But if he has the same season as last year and they win the Super Bowl, these fucking guys on TV are going to say the same shit. It's not going to stop. And they'll just craft their argument down a different lane. I'll promise you, we're years away from settling this. I mean, we're just accepted. Considering, I guess, mapping it out that he continues to play at a high level. But if he has the same season as he did last year, Pro Bowl guy, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFC, very good statistical season, Niners win 12-13 games, and they win the Super Bowl, I don't think it changes that much. Like, really? How good's his team been? What's it going to be like once they pay him? The pressure of being paid. Can he handle it? Seen this story a million times. Happens all the time. Now, if Trey Lance had done what he was doing, If you just remove the name Brock Purdy and just say Trey Lance had done what Brock had done the last couple of years, the conversation would be dramatically different. The power of your draft slot stays with you for a while. Fair or not. And a lot of times it's unfair. But it does. The 82 game preseason is in the books. And it's finally time for the real season. Don't miss out on any of the NBA playoff action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. From the play-in tournament through the finals, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered with same-game parlays, live betting, odds boosts, and so much more. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code JOHN. New customers bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's code JOHN, John, only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. What's up, John? It's from CJ. Longtime follower. I discovered you on top 10 NFL Twitter accounts to follow article in the mid-2010s. Since deleted Twitter in 2018. Jealous. Question. Give us the next position to have a precipitous rise or fall in salary across the league relative to other positions. You can go with number 2 wide receiver if you want, but if you do, throw a dark horse at the end, something people don't see coming yet. Well, it's already here, but these guys are going to continue to get paid a lot of money as these defensive tackles come in. And you could even use that position as well. But the guards and the defensive tackles, offensive tackles have always been paid a ton like defensive ends. One quarterback and then those two positions. Obviously, wide receivers jolted up now with them. But think of the defensive tackles that have came into this league over the last 4 or 5 years. Last year we saw, not last year, but a couple months ago in free agency, these guards get $17, $18, $19 million a year. I think Landon Dickerson got 19 or 20. So we're a couple years away. These premium guys, the defensive tackles making 25, 28, guards making 23, 24. That's pretty wild. You could be like, well, how's a guard make more than the high-end tight ends? It's a fair argument, but I don't see how the tight ends catch up anytime soon. Because no matter how long someone holds out, a Kittle, maybe Laporta does it next time. I want to be paid at, let's just say at the time, the top wide receiver in 3 years is making $40 million. And Laporta with his new contract is set to make 20. And he goes, I've had 3 seasons, shattered records. Again, this hypothetical. I've averaged 95 catches a year, averaged 10 touchdowns. Like, what are we talking about here? I am not signing a contract till I'm properly compensated. The teams won't do that because it's all based on your previous position that signed to that. So it just won't happen. These guards have already jolted up in the range of $20 million. Same with defensive tackles. You just had Chris Jones. Now he's the best, but still he got, what he's got, 3 years, $90 million. Aaron Donald, $30+ million a year. So I think we'll see defensive tackles. If Jalen Carter were to hit or a guy like that, obviously he's got a long way to go, but you know what I mean. We see these guys making $40, $50 million a year over the next 6-7 years. And a guard making $30 million a year. Meanwhile, the tight ends are, looking for scraps at 17. Longtime Packer fan from Wisconsin. I've met a lot of people from Wisconsin in Arizona. I know we had a house two houses actually right next to each other on the market for a lot of money, rooting for them to sell it. In one of the houses, the people's stuff was, for the most part, still in there, and they had a bunch of Brett Favre jerseys in the kids' room. Wanted to know your honest take on Jordan Love and his ceiling. The team is juiced with young talent, and I feel like they could be one good draft away from being right there as an NFC champion. Do you think he had a flash in the pan? I was talking to a buddy about this in the NFL, and even he was like, if you watch a couple of the right games, I mean, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. For those individual games. the difference between like him and Purdy, for example, like Purdy is really smart and he's actually a pretty explosive playmaker, but he doesn't have a great arm. He's a pretty good athlete, actually. But from an arm strength standpoint, NFL standard is pretty average. Like Jordan Love has a high-end arm. So if you're going to be accurate and you can make these off-platform throws, like he has Aaron Love, or excuse me, I combine Aaron and Jordan. Aaron Rodgers characteristics. I just get nervous anytime a guy does it one time. I love the PGA Tour. A lot of guys over the last 20 years have won one time on the PGA Tour. Not many guys can be like, yeah, I have 15 wins. I got 20 wins. I'm Scotty Scheffler. I've got 10 wins in the last 2 years. It's about doing it every single year. And I just don't know. It's the one thing I'll say about Brock. Now, he's put together. He did it 1 year. Then he got injured. Off season, came back, played better. He does it again. It's like, well, he's just can't even argue it. Like you said, he's a good quarterback. If Jordan Love has another year, he's just a good player. He's got a long way to go, though. Long way to go. I said yesterday on the mailbag, unless I get a relatively cheap extension, obviously last year, 2 years, $11 million, that wouldn't be the case now. But I would have no problem giving him $40 million if I see the first half of this season. It's like he's a lock Pro Bowl or even MVP type candidate. But I want to see a little more. Even if I believe in the guy, I like the guy, the teammates like the guy, he's clearly a pretty talented player. He's even done it a little bit. Did it in the playoffs, on the road in Dallas. Huge fan of the pod from Australia. Love the blend of football, expertise, deep thought, business, and humor. We got to make this entertaining. One for the mailbag. Big Patriot fan. Tell me if you think this trade back situation is too ambitious. This is the only way I trade out of the pick. Otherwise, I think May is a stud, and we should unequivocally take him. Trade with Minnesota. They give us pick 11 and pick 23 this year. Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, and a second rounder next year. Then at 11, we take Penix, and at 23, we take Keon Coleman or Mitchell. What do you reckon? Do you think they should throw in the Minnesota Twins and Anthony Edwards as well? That's a lot, man. That's a lot. That's not happening. I hear you, and there's nothing wrong. I mean, part of being ambitious is like, hey guys, you want this pick? Here it is. I think you guys would get celebrated if you got 11, 23, and Jordan Addison. You'd be like, wait, you just got their first round pick last year, who's good, and whose contract was in the 20s, and you got 11 and 23? That would be pretty nuts. You could argue if they gave you 11, 23, and next year's second rounder, I think you'd have to think about it. Now, the 49ers went from 12 to 3, and they gave up pick 12 and 2 other first rounders. So I think that's kind of the going rate. So 11 and 23. 23 is better than a future first rounder because it's now. I think the only thing you could ask for is one other first rounder. And remember, the Bears said, hey, give us DJ Moore because they viewed him as a first rounder talent, right? Under contract, veteran player. So I would say 11, 23, and Jordan Addison would be a fair ask. Or Hawkinson. Didn't Hawkinson tear his ACL at the end of the season? Am I imagining things? I thought that happened. TJ Hawkinson injury. Case. I think that would be risky. I would do the deal if I knew I could get Penix at 11, which there's no way to know at the time of the deal, but you probably could for 11, 23, and Jordan Addison. And maybe if you really wanted to kind of, hold their feet to the fire, throw in like a third round pick. But that's kind of the going rate. Which is crazy for Minnesota to do that. I would say we saw with the 49ers. You're getting the third quarterback off the board. if anyone does that with the Patriots, like if the Giants trade up from 6-3 and take a quarterback, not as crazy. You're only moving up 3 spots. Cost you, it won't cost you a first round pick. It'll cost you like second or third. If you would mortgage the future, 11, 23, and another first round pick for the third quarterback, we just have evidence. The 49ers did it. And it turned out to be like Bradley Chubb, Tyreek Hill, and someone else like Micah Parsons. So I would not do that if I was Minnesota. For a guy who wants to get a college degree, then works in football, a degree in statistics would probably set him apart from the rest of people trying to break into the business. We had a question, I think, last week. A guy asked me what degree he should get to try to break into the football business. And my take was, I don't think it matters that much. I just recommended like a general business degree, but statistics, I don't think that's a bad idea either. It's not easy, obviously, as a degree in communications or something like that. But with everything moving toward analytics, not a bad idea. Agree. Statistics, business, anything numbers wise wouldn't hurt. Longtime Rams fan. If according to the Lions coach Dan Campbell, that Goff is a better quarterback now than he was with the Rams, yet when Goff went to the Super Bowl with McVay, but only the NFC Championship with Campbell, isn't Campbell admitting that McVay is a better coach? You're like putting all the pieces together of the word scramble. Well, yes. I mean, if there was a draft, I like Dan Campbell. I think he's better than most, and I've defended him now for a couple of years. But I think we all agree, if there was a quarter or a coach draft, Sean McVay would go off the board before Dan Campbell. I mean, honestly, there's a chance Sean McVay would be the second coach off the board. Andy Reid would be the Caleb Williams of the draft. He would go 1. And then I think the conversation would be who would go 2. And I think it would probably be between Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay. Factoring in age, factoring in they call plays. There's some owner, Sean Payton, is just not easy to deal with. Hoodie's gone. He couldn't even get a job. I mean, who are the other playoff teams? Sirianni, no. McCarthy, no. Harbaugh, John Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh would be up near the mix too. I mean, you talk about the Harbaughs, McVay, Kyle Shanahan. Like Dan Campbell's not a top 5 pick. And I like Dan Campbell. But like if I draft Dan, does Ben Johnson get to come too? But Sean McVay is a better coach. And I would agree. I think Jared Goff, as he should be. Like you should be better at 31 years old than you were at 25 years old as a player. And he is. We had some people hit me up that it's Fugazi. Fugazi sounds better next to Friday. I agree. Fugazi Friday. It just works. We're not changing it. I've had a lot of, because I always say that women don't listen to the podcast. And I've had some slide into the DM saying, listen, I'm a female listener. I listen. Absolutely love your podcast. Found you through the volume. Listen to every episode. Question for the bag. Lifelong Broncos fan. My nickname is Fat Elway. It's a pretty good nickname. But given the Russell Wilson Fugazi, I've taken more interest in my local team, the Cowboys. Don't blame me. There's nothing worse than as a sports fan when your team just really sucks and is boring and is a tough watch. Like, that's brutal. We all agreed. A guy hit me up last year, for those of you who knew, he was a Patriot fan and asked if it was okay to leave the team. And we all agreed no. You don't get 20 years of sweetness and then a couple rough years and get to bounce. But the Broncos have been rough now, it feels like, for close to a decade. Like, I mean, a really, really rough watch. Because I live on the West Coast, I just see a lot of Broncos Chiefs, Broncos Raiders, Broncos Chargers. I see a lot of Broncos games. And they are immediate channel change over the last couple of years if there's a better game on. And part of it is in the afternoon window for me and for anybody, but for the local game is like there's sometimes on a given week only a couple games, and I just end up seeing a lot of Bronco games, and they are rough watch. So I don't blame you for being like, hey, Sean, When you kind of figure this out, let us all know. But right now, this is a tough consumption. Do you think there's any chance the Cowboys are hoping to let both McCarthy and Dak walk at the end of the season and then hire Deion and draft his son, Shedeur? If Deion Sanders is the coach of the Cowboys next year, that'd be the most fucking incredible thing of all time from an entertainment standpoint. Now, Deion Sanders has coached 1 year in the Power 5. Granted, team sucked that he took over. They won 4 games. How many games would Deion have to win this year to make that move? Not the craziest move we've ever seen in the history of sports. If you told me he got to 9 wins, including the bowl, I'd be like, yeah, clearly he knows what he's doing. If he wins under 6 games, I just don't think you could make that move. You couldn't fire Mike McCarthy for that. Listen, we can get on Mike McCarthy, but he knows what he's doing. And even firing McCarthy for Deion would be a pretty big stretch. But I would sign up right now for Deion Sanders as the Cowboy coach next year. That would be incredible. Probably more likely with Vrabel or Belichick. But I think Deion would be pretty interested. We have Shedeur is a huge unknown, like how good he's going to play this year. But if he has an up and down season, I just don't think he'd be a first round pick. Now, if he's really good and they're good, then 100% he will be. But I think we got to pump the brakes a little bit on his draft hype. Because last year as the season went on was a joke. I mean, it was a rough watch. So I don't know. That's interesting. I hadn't even thought about that. I'd be on board, though. I really would. Appreciate the year-round football content. As a young guy in his 20s, I appreciate the insight you shed on life, career, and business. Been struggling with my career recently and wanted to hear your thoughts. I did well for myself in sales right away right out of college. Tried to go out on my own and start my own company. Didn't go as planned. I got sued. Now I've been going through some sales jobs the last 2 years. Found a good job in fintech, pays the bills, and not too hard. $55K plus commission. Not sure I want to stay in sales. I used to be a sports management major who ended up getting an accounting degree. Unfortunately, I don't want to be an accountant. Obviously, you don't have a conventional path, but would love to hear your thoughts on what you would do now if sports media scouting wasn't in the cards. One thing I realized as I've done this for a long time, looking back even on scouting and then what I do now, is if you can sell, you can kind of do anything. Because selling is such a big part of our world. And if you can continue to master the art of selling, I think you will be more equipped to go on your own again. Because the hardest part, now obviously, I don't know what your company was, if you tried to develop some product, if you got sued because you patent or who knows, I can't even begin to guess. But if you can master the art of selling, to me, you can be a successful entrepreneur. Because one thing you're going to hear in life, whether you're a sales guy for a company at fintech or whether you're a sales guy for yourself, which you're going to be when you first start, you're going to get used to hearing no's. No one emailing you back. People slamming the door in your face. Not texting you back. You'll be unfucking faced. Unfaced. So to me, I would just continue to master the art of selling. Because as I've gotten older, it's a huge part of my job. We have very, very good relationships with the advertisers on this show. Because I understand their importance. And I will sell it. I would attempt to sell ice to an Eskimo if some ice company said, hey, we're sending you up to Alaska. You're going to meet some Eskimos. If you sell this, we will buy your show. I'd say, tell me what time I need to be at the airport. And the younger me, I remember when I interned for the Kansas City Chiefs in 2007, my senior year in college, took an unpaid internship in Kansas City. My dad had a guy he went to college with whose son lived in Overland Park. So he basically gave me a room for free. And For 4 months, I interned in the sales department. So like selling sponsorships, selling all that type stuff. This is when Herm Edwards was the coach. And I remember thinking, I never want to be a sales guy. I want to work in football. And that's kind of when my love of wanting to work in the NFL really amplified. And I remember a couple times I would sneak up there. I made a couple relationships and I tried to help them out, but the season got so ugly that it kind of sparked my, I would say, ambition to do that. But at the time, I remember seeing the sales guys that I worked for who were kind of hustlers, thinking like, I don't want to do that. And then as I've gotten older, like I just realized it's a huge part of life. It really is. And what I do, I mean, my entire job is selling you the entertainment of listening to me every single day. So regardless what you do, and there's nothing easier to sell than your own product, right? That's why a lot of, I would say, entrepreneurs, unless they had some incredible idea, I would say a large percentage of them are natural sales guys. So I embrace it now because I know it's the way for me to be successful. So you're already in it. You're already kind of, mastering your craft. Every, day that goes by, that's what you're doing. You're going to get better at it. I would say stick with that and figure out a way to eventually kind of do what you want to do and figure out a way to kind of build that business around sales if that's what you're good at. Because if you can sell, you can make money. If you can design stuff, there's no guarantee. If you can create products, you still got to distribute it and sell it. If you can sell, you can figure it out. That would be my advice. Maybe some people listening to this think I'm a fucking idiot, and that's not true. I believe that to my core. And I don't think that will ever change. So, master selling. Appreciate everyone listening. Mock draft tomorrow.